The Diary of a Professor, Journal Entry 1. So I'm a music professor. On my YouTube channel, I go by Professor Ron, and I make tutorial videos for students and professors. And there's a spider climbing, having fun over here. So I enjoy making these tutorial videos for students and professors for Blackboard and other apps and technology that have to do with learning management systems, whether it's Blackboard or whatever it is. I thought I'd kind of do something just a little bit different. I never thought I would even do, but today was a pretty frustrating day. And, you know, being a YouTuber and an educator and professor, I figured just get it out, you know, talk about it a little bit. And it has to do with students that are in a college or university and maybe the typical day and how things go. And I guess what I'm trying to say is today was a frustrating day because, you know, what I found out, and I've known for a very, very long time, and I've been trying to work through it, is the modern day learner and, you know, many of the typical college courses at universities, there are some things that are kind of all flipped upside down. What do I mean? Well, straight up, students don't take notes in a class, and it can be a little bit frustrating. I think that if we can get back to some note taking, it would really help students. Taking notes, it's one of the gateways to learning and remembering and critical thinking and making connections. So taking notes was a concern for me in one of my classes today. And for some classes, they're amazing at taking notes. For others, it feels like it's a split decision. You know, it's all over the map on, you know, note taking and retention percentages and all this and that. Math aside, it can be frustrating when you're giving whether it's a mini lecture, long lecture, whatever the lecture is. If you're giving some kind of lecture in a class, like I teach music appreciation or American music, you're teaching these live face-to-face classes and no one's taking notes. It's like, well, what are you doing? So this was a frustrating thing to see today, and in other classes and other times there's been some of that. So what are some other things maybe with the modern day learner that, you know, others may be struggling with? Well, students don't always want to do work at home, but they also don't want to do work in the class. And this is an interesting one. So I've tried experiments where we will do assignments together in class. So we're in music appreciation, and there'll be, say, a journal, like listen to Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, and let's talk, you know, take some notes, let's talk it through as a class and have some fun with it. And sometimes it goes really amazing, and other times people won't watch the video. They'll be right there in the class playing on their phone, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, playing video games, or they will do the assignment. You know, and I guess depending on how the class is set up, if you're running it in a lab or if I'm just using one big screen, they kind of have no choice. But even when I'm in a classroom that has one big screen and I run it from there, or if I'm in a lab for some reason, they both have their unique challenges, you know. So in this particular class I was teaching in today, I didn't get to actually pick the room. The room is actually a computer lab. Not sure that's working out too well. We'll see, but probably the change I'll have to make right away is get everything on the big screen, and everyone's got to be actively engaged to the assignment. But you don't always have control of your rooms necessarily, or all the technology or things that, but certainly we can chime in and improve those, of course, absolutely. But I think the bigger thing here is students not taking notes. Like the modern day learner feels like they can memorize their whole life. And it's not, it doesn't work that way. The brain doesn't work that way. You can't memorize your whole life. You're lucky to remember 30% from, you know, an hour-long lecture or even a 30-minute lecture. And taking notes helps that retention. Having the lecture recorded, audio and or video, that certainly can increase the percentage. Notes increases the percentage. You know, some PowerPoints, possibly pictures. There's a lot of things in terms of, visual stimulation and writing. Everything's not about like, you know, rote memorization. Sure, there's some things that you have to do that in terms of different disciplines or whatever. You're in a math class, you need to memorize the formulas, absolutely. You know, you're in chemistry, yeah, you got to memorize the periodic table of elements. It's not that hard. It's made hard because people just wait to the last minute to figure all this stuff out, and you just gotta do the work. So the frustration from the class today, not just today, but And it's not that all my classes are like that. I have some amazing students and amazing classes all over the place, where I'm at. But I do think that it's a challenge to get students to take notes and to do their work sometimes. It's a challenge to have class discussions. So basically today there wasn't a lot of note taking going on, but that wasn't even really the worst part. I think the worst part was people didn't prepare before the class. So if you have a book to read, you got to read, you need to read the poem, read the text, read the chapters. If you're in history and you got a couple chapters to read, or even just one chapter or 5 pages or 100 pages, whatever the page requirement is, the idea behind reading a book in the class and connecting to the lecture is you're able to connect to the learning more. If you're taking a college class and there's a required book or required books, if you don't read the book before you go to class, it's quite a challenge to understand it. I mean, if you're a brilliant genius, cool, kudos to you. But the whole world it isn't. A lot of us are just average people, and there's nothing wrong with being average. So look, while I'm hampering on taking notes, it's certainly super important, and that's probably the common denominator, common thread that I'm seeing. Like, not enough people are taking notes in college courses, and taking notes is an essential thing for development and growth and learning and connecting and critical thinking and on and on and on. But even before the note taking, maybe this is a cardinal sin. Maybe note taking has to be number one. But even before the note taking, there's got to be something that comes before that. So if it's a TED talk that's 10 minutes or 30 minutes, or if it's a video lectures, or if you're reading chapters in a book, those things help prepare you for the live in-class action in a live face-to-face class, whether it's music appreciation, American music, History 1, History 2, government, Texas government, all these different classes, Intro to Philosophy, the list goes on and on and on. So, if you're a student and you really want to learn, if you want to embrace the learning, then we've got to embrace what's called active learning. And so active learning, when we talk about this maybe in 2024 and leading into 2025, it's really simple. We don't need a 8-minute YouTube video or a 2-hour class or a 16-week course to talk about active learning. It's super simple. Active learning is just participatory. It's participation. Active learning is not a teacher going into a class and lecturing for an hour or hour and 15 minutes or whatever, maybe it's an hour and a half or whatever the case may be. Active learning, it's both sides of the table participating. It's almost like a partnership, a team. And so while lecturing, yes, is still absolutely essential and important, it doesn't need to be, you don't have to read, 20 pages of notes from a lectern and then barely have time for a Q&A at the end. There's not really a right or wrong way to do any of this stuff. There's so many different ways to learn and teach. The trick is to try to find what is going to be, we've thought about engagement, but you can't have an engaging course if you're, you have to be a master of the subject content area, and pretty much we all are, aren't we? I mean, we are, as we are the best we can be. And so if you're just super awesome on your subject matter and content, and you want to make it engaging, and I want to make it engaging, we all want to make it engaging. It's not even the next step. It has to come a little bit later. So to make it engaging, you got to be really prepared. The professor's got to be super prepared on their bullet points, notes, lectures, memorized or read. All the video and or audio lectures got to be really, solid bullet points and or prepared things. In-class lectures, to me, it seems as though what I would call the mini lecture. And it sounds like a lot of work. It's like that if you do a mini lecture, you got to turn all your lectures into TED Talks. It's not that it has to be that way. You can still give, 30, 40-minute lecture. What I'm saying is if we keep giving, hour plus long lectures in a live class setting, it can be a challenge for the modern day student to kind of, connect and maybe grapple with the material. So then what can we do for active learning? I'm saying it's real simple and I'm taking too long to get there. But active learning, one of the things we can do is, we can have a variety of assignments. You can have journal assignments, class discussions, assignments where students will record their answers, like an audio answer on their cell phone. Assignments where students will, make a video talking about, the work. Assignments where they can underline, highlight, summarize. Now, maybe some of the things I'm talking about are maybe more appropriate for, say, music appreciation or American music, but the whole point is, I'm not here to give the coolest ideas necessarily, but just finding different modalities to lead into engagement. So the different modalities are certainly they're gonna help when there's different modalities in the class. While taking notes is important, if every assignment is based on writing or typing everything, that you probably want to explore other types of assignments. It'd make it more fun for you as the professor, and I would hope, and I think it'd make it more fun for the students too. So note-taking is super important, but before the note-taking, you gotta have like some chapters in a book to read, some poems to read. There's gotta be something to read, or some video material, whether it's TED Talks or recorded audio or video lectures, where there's some connections that be made, so that then when they're reading the book or listen to audio lecture, video lecture, then they're taking notes from that. And then, they lead into a live class where you're doing this mini lecture idea where they've already actually watched the lecture outside of class, whether it was 10, 30, or an hour. And then the students are thinking like, well, why am I in a live class if I have to watch some video lecture or 30-minute TED Talk by Evelyn Glennie, How to Truly Listen? The point is when you're in the class so that it can be active, it can be participatory. So I guess some people call this maybe like a flipped classroom. Sure, I would call it an active learning classroom, but not active learning in terms of you got 4 or 5 people at a station with your big monitor and like you're rolling with the lecture and doing the assignments. That's a cool like classroom and works for a lot of people as well. I'm talking about active learning in terms of the flow. So we're gonna say like, hey, everyone's awesome at their content stuff. Like professors, teachers are just super awesome at all this content. They got it on lockdown. The PowerPoints are short and sweet if you do use them, no paragraphs. You're not reading the PowerPoints verbatim. It's just there to guide the flow of whatever the lecture is or mini lecture. So when you're actively learning, you are, turning everything upside down or flipping it, or you certainly can think about it that way, but active learning to me is, it's how you present the subject, matter, material, and it's the variety of the assignments. And when you mix all that together, it's gonna lead into being engaging. And so how, like I want to try to do that and encourage other people to try to do that and get students to understand, and maybe other professors like, oh man, what are we going to do about learners today? Is just have those different kinds of assignments in the course. So if the student is watching TED Talks and listening to all these lectures before a live class, then when you get to the class, like the very first thing to do, it's a music appreciation class. They have to watch a 30-minute lecture recorded by the professor, or they're watching a TED Talk. They do that before the class, then they go to the class. What's the next step? The teacher walks in, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to music appreciation. Let's talk about what you learned. Who would like to share? Maybe not everyone wants to chime in super quick, call a couple people, put them in the hot seat, but make it comfortable, cool, and happy. And then as you're doing the Q&A over whatever the required video assignment was to have a class discussion on, then the professor can then piggyback on things that each student says and hopes that more students will get on there. Look, you can't force students to do their homework. You can't force students to take notes. You can't force students to talk. You can certainly put things in your syllabus and make it all point-based, but then maybe you cause some undue stress, anxiety. I'm not saying we have to all be Care Bears necessarily, but you just got to finding middle ground can certainly be a challenge. I am able to get all of my students to participate in class discussions and do the work most of the time, but there are challenges like today where it just wasn't a good day, wasn't a good day. So, the students did that video like I was saying, and then, the professor comes into the class, welcomes the class, you get people chiming in on what they learned from the video, and in my case today, it was a ghost town. It was crickets. I did have a few, but not many. You're talking, I have a class close to 30, and there's 2 or 3 people that want to say a few words. It's relative to, it's almost a ghost town. So then where do we go from there? I think that with active learning, everything has to be there. It's got to have participation. I think we just have to think more about that. We all have to think more about that. But you don't have to lower your standards. Academic rigor must be maintained. Academic integrity must be maintained. Standards and quality and be nice. Be nice. It's so important. Be kind, be nice, you know. So I think that, you know, these kind of ideas will work, but the modern day learner, they're a lot different than 5, 10, 20 years ago. So all we really have to do is think about what are things that we can do, like, that just can really be a difference maker, you know, in the short term, and then kind of look at the midterm or long term of all that. And I think it's, you know, it's having, you know, books and or video assignments before class and talking about those things in class discussions. I think it's finding a way creatively to get students to want to take notes no matter what's happening in the class. I think it's getting students to stop taking zeros. You know, it's one of the biggest things. It's like zero after zero after zero. And I don't know, maybe this stems from, you know, struggles in high school, maybe, or where, you know, maybe they got a lot more chances to keep turning in assignments late or whatever, but this is rampant in higher ed with just zeros everywhere. No one should be getting a zero on anything. Just do something, you know, do something, anything, you know. So I think these are all some big things to think about. So one of the things I did today in class was I asked the students a question. Okay, yeah. I asked them, you know, what could I do to help you enjoy the class more? The responses were pretty interesting. So I got responses like, well, I thought this class was about just listening to music and talking about, you know, the melody and the harmony. Okay, so maybe there's a part of the class that, of course, in a music class, you know, music appreciation or American music, yeah, you're going to talk about those things. But that answer alone told me that the student didn't really understand what the class was all about. And it's very clearly stated in the syllabus. It's very clearly stated in any introductory videos, and it's very clearly stated in all of the live mini lectures and whatnot. So, you know, I didn't get mad or anything. I don't do that, you know. I mean, just asked them, you know, I want to keep things happy, you know. I'm not a kind of dude professor that's gonna raise their voice or get mad or nothing like that. No. Just trying to see like where they're at, you know. Where are these students at right now? I think the misunderstanding of the seriousness of classes, that even an elective course, you know, has a serious nature, but it can still be fun. But I think if you fight the professor, or if you fight the curriculum, or if you want the class to be something different, but that's not in the curriculum, that's not a lot, you know, the teacher can do in that. But there is an element of any music course that's, you know, it's got that historical base or context that you're going to talk about, you know, melody, harmony, rhythm, dynamics, texture, form, instruments, and vocals. Yes, absolutely, the vocab words, but also how do you apply that to real songs? You know, whether it be Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, or like Beethoven Symphony 5, you know, Brahms Symphony 4, you know, Love the Way You Lie, you know, Skylar Grey, you know, Alex the Kid, Eminem, Rihanna, like that whole flow. Sure, and I can go on and on with all these different kinds of songs, but there's a part of the class. The thing about talking about all the elements or the theory behind all the music is if you don't already have that background, you're going to be a bit limited. You know, a music appreciation course specifically, you're not there to learn like theory and ear training and piano skills. You're there to learn, you know, some history about the music, but many other things. So like you can, you know, learn the elements of music, you know, like what I was saying the words earlier, you know, melody, harmony, rhythm, dynamics, texture, form, instruments, and vocals. Boom. You're there to learn that. You're there to learn, you know, about who's Mozart, who's Beethoven, you know, who's Joseph Haydn, who's Bach, who's Vivaldi, who's George Frederick Handel. You know, you're there to learn about, you know, music maybe from the Middle Ages or Renaissance, or maybe, you know, Elvis Presley or the Beatles. Like the class just it has so many options, you know, you can dig into. So I think for the modern day learner, I don't think it's that the student is allergic to work or they just don't want to do it. It is a really interesting thing. I think if we keep trying to experiment, that's probably one of the best things we can do. You could draw a line in the sand if you want, but you might just be unhappy, you know, have inner turmoil, and you will, as a professor or a teacher, you'll end up working not only harder than the students, but much harder by probably 37, 40, 50 exponents. And that's not good for our health. So we've got to find those creative, happy solutions. and of course also not punish students in the course who really enjoy the flow of the class. And you may have one or two students that are just kind of, bucking or, fighting a little bit, metaphorically speaking, like they're just, So I think if we think about active learning as participation, team, instructor, professor, to the students, and making sure there's, some class discussions and some video homework, but also, having, if it's a music class, I'll play, all of the first movement of, say, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and we'll talk about it. There's tons of music, of course, played in the class. I'm not going to play maybe a 30-minute long piece or something like that, but a good mix of, in-class participation, in-class discussions, in-class music for a music class or any class. I think it's just mixed. If it's too heavy one way or the other, if it's just only lecture and no activities, it can be kind of a dull thing maybe for everybody. It doesn't make it right or wrong. I mean, it's totally up to you, kind of what you want to do. But I think like active learning in 2024 and 2025, what is active learning? It's participation, and it's variety and assignments and modalities that you use. And if we can dig on that, we'll be great. As I was saying earlier, just PowerPoints are cool, but paragraphs and a bunch of fancy sentences don't bode well. Short and sweet bullet points, and then have some more expanded notes that you can reference if it's not memorized. Shooting from the hip or being willy-nilly as a teacher, students read through that. Those days are gone. They're going to read through it, and they're out. We got to be on our ball game. We got to be super, super prepared with the things we do. We don't have to stress. No stress about it. Just prepare. And when the students buck or aren't feeling it, experiments. So I had a pretty big. The big experiment today for me was, this was an experiment to see, are they going to do the video assignment? Are the students going to be prepared? Did they do the video assignment, number one? Did they take notes, number two? And if I called on them, or if they volunteered, were they able to? Did they read from their notes, or did they synthesize and maybe shorten or condense that, to get it digestible and so that more people could have a chance to talk, kind of thing. That was a big epic failure today on student preparation, and only just a couple of people actually taking notes or even doing the assignment. But the other thing also is, even in today, students were playing video games when I was doing like a mini lecture. Students are talking, students are playing video games. I mean, heck, at one time there was like 5 students talking. But for the whole time, there was constantly 2 students either playing games or talking. And you can spend your time disciplining students in class, but it doesn't seem to always work out. You could get razzle dazzled, but I mean, it's better probably just to stay the course, and find a way to get them, pause for a moment and get them involved in the conversation, an impromptu class discussion, and get those students that are causing a ruckus to connect. I don't know if that's the right or wrong way. You got to try something. It's all about these different experiments that we run. So with having students playing on their phones and video games and social media and not being all in, I think the danger for us as teachers is you'll just throw your hands up and be like, whatever. But don't do it. I'm never going to give up on students. Don't you ever give up on students. You got to keep going, no matter how rough it is for any teacher out there. Teachers work hard, and we carry that, our heart is literally, it feels like it's on our sleeve constantly, on my shoulder or whatever. So I want to keep encouraging both professors and students to push through the tough times and embrace the idea of active learning. Think about, like, if you want to be an active learner, all you got to do is be prepared. Number one, be prepared. And how do you be prepared? Take notes, read the book, read the chapters, read the poem, watch the assigned video, get better at taking notes, take audio notes, take handwritten notes, take video notes, do what works for you. Turn in the assignments, do the assignments, watch the tutorial videos, pay attention in the lecture. When there's time for questions, ask questions. the coolest thing about questions in any class that any teacher ever teaches is the more prepared the students are, the more meaningful the questions are. And then there's a lot of excitement. That's where the engagement actually happens, when the student's truly prepared. It leads them to meaningful questions. And then they see that like spark, like the teacher sees the spark in the student sees the spark connection to the professor, and that there's some magic that kind of seems to happen there. So I think that preparation, but I think we are in the day of times of a lot of students just they don't want to take notes, or they want to play on their phone, or they miss classes, or they don't do assignments. I think the other danger for a student, and we're in some trouble area here, where students, it's like the quality of their work is sometimes dictated by whether or not they like the teacher or the class, the subject, or the assignment. And it shouldn't be that way. The quality of your work should never be dictated by whether or not you like the class or the assignment. You should always do your personal best, like whether or not you like the class, teacher, subject, or assignment. I think it becomes a real concern when students do really amazing work when they think the assignment's cool or they like it. The real world just doesn't work that way. So we need to get back to the real world, but we also need to, be sympathetic and, empathetic. But while those words get tossed around, what I mean is just be kind, be nice, and experiment with things you do in your college course as a professor. And for students that are listening, you need to be prepared. If you think a class is boring, like someone told me today, your class is boring. And I'm like thinking, so my class is boring, but I'm talking about Eminem, Rihanna, Michael Jackson, the Beatles, Elvis, Mozart, Beethoven, BTS, Billie Eilish. I mean, that's just the tip. It keeps going and going and going. I'm talking about music, so many different artists. And a big part of what I focus on is the stories behind the music. I focus on the elements of music, melody, harmony, rhythm, dynamics, texture, form, instruments, and vocals. I've said a few times in video. And I'll take a word like rhythm, and then I'll talk about rhythm, the organization of time in music. And then I'm like, all right, let's listen to Rap God by Eminem. Let's talk about the rhythm that's going on there. Cool. Let's listen to Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin. Let's talk about the rhythm that's going on there. Cool. Let's listen to Black Page #1, and then let's talk about the rhythm that's going on there. What's happening there? Awesome. Let's take a listen to When the Levee Breaks, John Bonham with Led Zeppelin. Let's talk about the rhythm. So I'll take these vocabulary words and they lead us into songs and discussion. If that's boring, I don't know what else to do. Maybe that's not cool for some people, and maybe some people just hate that, and they don't want that. I guess, I don't know. So, you can't please everybody, and you can't be a people pleaser, and you can't be a brown noser as a teacher. And students need to understand that as well. We've got to teach the curriculum, and while at college, professors can choose their own books, and there's no way to talk about every single thing in any kind of music appreciation textbook or American music book. You have to get the best sampling that you can, and maybe rotate topics or subjects. I think these are important things to kind of think about. So what else can I tell you about my day that won't bore you to death on Professor Ron's Journal 1 or whatever? Is that teaching is a tough gig, but the modern day student is something that we've got to do a better job of connecting with. And the modern day student has to do a better job of, you can't just think that, college classes are going to be like, a drive-through at McDonald's or like scrolling through Instagram. I mean, as much as it pains me to say that, I enjoy making YouTube videos and posting on Instagram, but it doesn't supersede my learning or preparation and the things that I do in my life. So I don't know. I'm never one to blame social media and video games by any means. Maybe it sounds like it right now, but I do think that our attention spans, it's not what it was a few hundred years ago, and we got to work on focus and attention. Reading can certainly help with that. So as much as I love maybe playing a game now and then or doing these kind of things, I just make sure to do my work first. And I think if students can just get that work done, work, grind, work hard, work hard. Thanks for listening. I don't have anything else. I'll see you in the next one. Later.